Hello and welcome to our advanced session on Oracle Quality. I'm going to cover several things in this session. I want to talk a little bit about specifications, how they're used. I want to talk about parent-child plans and how you can utilize those. A little bit about security user groups, the quality workbench, and also want to touch a bit on how you can use Oracle Quality to generate custom tables. So that's a lot to cover, and let's get started. First, let's go into our setup menu and let's have a look at specifications. Now, this is assuming you've already created some collection elements and perhaps some collection plans. Those would be prerequisites to entering specifications. Most of the time, you would set up specifications to be item specific. And what that means is you would have a one-to-one relationship between the specification and the item itself. And that's what I typically see. Although it doesn't have to be that way. You can also set up specifications that would link to, say for instance, a category of items. So if you had items that had common parameter tolerances, then you could set up a specification to manage all of those tolerances for a given item. So that's something to think about when you start planning for specifications. But what I typically see is a one-to-one relationship between the specification name and the item itself. Let's go into our Find screen here. And first off, let's just grab that specification there and have a look at it. In this case, they have a one-to-one relationship between the item spec and the item itself. If we go into the specification elements, they have one specification that is tied to a target value, and they have upper and lower limits. They have no user-defined range or no reasonable range. Those are not required. So, if you recall, these values can be established in the specification element, or you can also establish them here as well. So I can overwrite these. They don't have to necessarily default from the element values that you established. If I did want to default those, then I could use the copy from to bring those values from the element into this form. You can add more elements, of course, and you have any that are available. Let's try to find something that is applicable. Okay, and here it defaulted in our target, lower and upper values. And again, I could change those if I wanted to for this particular specification, but I'll just leave them for now. So I can save that, and we'll add power and voltage to our specification. I can also do org assignments, so I can assign this specification to different organizations. So it allows me a lot of versatility of using the spec one time, but at many sites. And I can just check the assign button if I wish to assign them. Alright, now the next thing you're probably wondering is, how do I use this specification within a collection plan? Let's go into our results and have a look at how that's done. So once I've established my specification, skipped one thing. Let me go back. Let's we have to link a specification to a collection plan. So I should be able, there we go, that's what I wanted to see. Should be able to query up my collection plans, and let's just take that first one. And right now it's not linked to any specification, but we're going to link it to a spec. And that'll be valid whenever our item equals the item that was chosen in the spec. So do a little bit of arranging here so that we can see how all of this works. Let's go back and get our spec. Yes, that's the one we want. So push that down to here. There's our collection plan. I've linked it to item specifications. Now we're ready to go into our results. Alright, I'm back now from that little mishap. One of the things that I neglected to do was take the specification element of voltage and create that within the collection plan that I'm using. So voltage is there now, and I've linked that to the specification. So now let's try it. So if I look at my jobs, query those. So now I can go over to this element for voltage, and it brings up my target upper and lower limit. So let's try entering something outside the limit. And here we have an error. It says the value must be greater than or equal to the lower reasonable limit of 21. So it doesn't let the user enter that value. So it forces them to pick a value that is within that range. You may not wish to do that simply because you want to collect this information. But in some cases you may wish to do that so that they are repairing or fixing the material as they're entering in the information. There may be a way to arrange it. So anyway, that's how specifications work. You can establish them, link them to an item, put them in your collection plan. Once they're in your collection plan, they are there for you to use. Okay. Alright, our next section that we're going to cover is parent-child plan relationships. And the reason that you might consider using a parent-child plan is because your quality process might involve more than one collection of data. To give you, for instance, of this, you might have a collection of data in work in process where users might enter information regarding testing. Based on those test outputs, you could set up a child plan that a quality inspector might want to add to. So the operator enters the initial data, the quality inspector enters the corrective action or disposition data, and then you can even have another plan, a child plan to that, to where Quality Manager enters car data to a supplier, corrective action request to a supplier. So depending on your business process and how you would arrange them, you could have multiple parent-child plan relationships. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you establish that. First off, these plans are used inside the HTML forms. So we're going to switch to this HTML form. If you switch back and forth, you can see the difference. So here's the standard Oracle forms. Here's an HTML form, and you can only do this within an HTML form. So keep that in mind. And it comes up automatically for you when you make that selection in your menu. So let's go down and find our M1 organization. And we'll see what plans are available. Using the % here, let's pick our assembly collection plan, and then let's pick a child plan to it. Our acceptance plan. We're going to go for a standard parent-child relationship. We'll go with a single row, and we'll go with an immediate data entry. So make those selections, hit your next button, and now we can establish a relationship between the plans. So I could say, for instance, item in my parent plan is copied to the item child element, and I can set that as a key. So that way I don't have to re-enter the item in my child plan. It'll get passed down via the parent plan. So if you've got elements that are related to each other from the parent and the child, and you want to pass those relationships forward, you can use this feature to do that. The next thing is we need to establish our conditions. So we can say, for instance, if an item equals, put in our item number. So this is the only condition that we would want that child plan to open. So we set that for that particular one. Go to the next button, and you'll notice we're at the confirm step. So it says here's our organization, parent-child plan, relationships, element relationships, and criteria. So again, our child plan would not populate, would not be active until these conditions are met. Once you've put in that information, hit submit, it will create those established relationships. And then you just click the OK button, and then that takes you back to your main screen. And we're going to switch over to our main menu. And if I were to go into results and enter quality results, we're going to choose our parent plan. We have to put in our specification because I linked that in our last session. And now we see that we have a child plan in this child plan box down here. So I can choose that child plan, and normally I would enter data here, and then that data gets passed down as I go to my child plan entry. So I'm going to show that to you real quick. Shorten that query up just a bit. specification again. So on my value there. Alright, now I'm ready to go enter my child plan. And you'll notice it brought that up, and it brought it up in front of the parent plan, so you can actually see both. You'll notice that it brought my item from this plan into this plan, and now I can choose those values. And there shouldn't be, yes there isn't, there's no child plan below this one, but you could establish linkage between parent, child, and keep going. So that should give you some insight as to how you would use your parent-child collection plans. And I hope you like that section. The next section I want to cover is security. So let's close out of this. I'm not going to save it. Alright, for security, we're going to go to Setup. We're going to come down to User Groups. Okay. I've already set up a user group. Test 1, and I don't know if you caught the navigation that I just did there, but if you do a Control F, or Alt F11, I'm sorry, it'll do a query on the form, and arrow down will take you through the different records that were queried. This is one that I already established where I put in my user information. So that's my user group, Test 1. So we need to remember that. So another thing too, test groups, is that you can enter several members. So there you can have multiple members that are assigned to a specific user group. What we're going to do with that user group is give them some privileges. So once you've established that user group, this is a great way to maintain the security of these collection plans so that you don't lose data and only the proper people are entering the data. So now we're going to go to Grant Privileges, and we'll just look this up. So here's our group list. This is the group that I created, and I'm going to give that group access to this collection plan, and I can say, okay, they can enter results, they can view results, they can update results, but they can't delete or they can't change the plan. So if I save this, this will enforce that restriction, and only individuals that have access to these two menus can make those changes. So even if I were to go into the change plan form, it would be grayed out. I wouldn't be able to make a change once I would have saved this information. So you can try that out when you get set up on your system and you want to try out some of these things that we're being instructed on. Alright, so that covers how you would use user groups, privileges. The next section I want to cover is the workbench. So if we go down to the workbench, and let's just go into collection results, that opens up as a HTML screen. Right, so when we're in collection results, when we're in the workbench, we have these tabs across the top. We happen to open it up in collection results. The first thing we need to establish is our organization. So if we were to open up the form, do a query, we could scroll down, or if we know how to reduce the list a little more, we can do this and choose our M1 organization. Alright, and you need to hit the Go button. Then that will do the selection of M1. You see it there. And now we can see the plans that are available. And there's our collection plan that we've been using. You can export these results if you want, but usually I go into the plan itself and then I can see the different records that have been collected. So here's all the data that's been collected. Now in this case there's only 2 records. Also it does give me a lot of the capabilities that you would have in the other forms themselves, but some people like having them in an HTML format. It's whatever you like. You can add child data, you can upload child data, you can delete a record. Again, I could only delete a record if my security allowed it, or even update a record. So these are the collection results. This is how you would access them. And like I said, this is basically the HTML workbench. So for quality. Alright, when you're done with that, close the window. Takes you back to your main screen. Let's go back to our menu here. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I mentioned it in an earlier training session, was how you could use quality beyond what they've developed quality for. For instance, there's a lot of companies out there that need data that doesn't necessarily fit within the standard forms that Oracle provides. With the quality module, what you probably have noticed is that you can create collection plans that have a relationship to your quality processes, but you can also create collection plans that just contain data, that just provide a way to collect data, any kind of data that you wish to collect. So what Oracle has done for us in our collection plan setups is provided us with a way of determining where that table is within our database. So for instance, if I bring up our collection plan here and I click the Views button, I can hit Create, and what that does is it sends a concurrent process off to create those tables. So at this point I could take that information and I could go to a developer who may be writing a discovery report, writing a custom report, and say I need something that will work with the data that is in this table. This is the table that they would use. There are also import routines if you need to import data into this collection plan. So it's kind of a way of developing a custom table within Oracle. It gives you the form for updating the table, changing records within the table, and gives you the table location. So a lot of people find that very useful, and I've seen some very good, very clever ways of using that capability. So that's covered the advanced section of Oracle Quality. There's a few things that I probably haven't covered, and I'm sure I'm going to have to go back and look through my list here and find those things and put them into another session. But for now, that completes this session. I appreciate your time. I hope you find this useful, and look for others to come soon. Thank you very much.